Hello. Tonight's Facebook Live, we're going to be talking about inflammatory foods and what would be some good healthy swaps to those foods that you might be having. And so I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. Hi, Brian. Thanks for joining. For anyone else who's joining, feel free to say hello in the comments. If you have any questions, you can put them there too. And as I said, tonight's Facebook Live is about inflammation. So I think inflammation gets a bad rap because obviously chronic inflammation can lead to lots of different symptoms and issues, but actually inflammation is in itself not a bad thing. It's your body's natural response to as a means to protect itself from harm and also to promote healing and recovery. So we have what's called acute inflammation and then also what is called chronic inflammation. So acute inflammation you may be familiar with, but it's basically a process to help to repair damaged tissue when you have an injury. It also is a means to help you recover from colds, illnesses, exposure to allergens or toxins, but it becomes a problem when inflammation is chronic. And so this can be in response to as a result of excessive stress on your body, and that stress can be physical stress like injuries. It can be emotional stress from work, from family, from whatever situation you might have going on. It can also be from chemical stress. So that could be toxins in cleaning products. It can be pesticides in your environment or in your foods. It can be formaldehyde in like building materials, things like that. So it can be all different types of stressors on the body. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's just one, but when you have these constant stressors, hi Anjana, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining. When you're exposed to these constant stressors, your immune system then becomes overwhelmed and it increases the inflammatory response. And this is what could potentially lead to chronic pain and other health issues. So chronic inflammation can lead to things like memory loss, cognitive decline, can lead to the abnormal growth of healthy cells, compromised digestion, loss of muscle tone, weight gain, accelerated skin aging, joint pain, and the loss of mobility in the joints too. So let's talk about inflammation and foods. So when we think of an inflammatory diet is one that's going to be one low in nutrients, and it's also behind the cause of modern day inflammation. So there's certain foods that we'll be going over, such as sugar, refined oils, gluten, things like this. When we eat them can increase the risk of inflammation. But the good news is that to combat inflammation, we can start to reduce these foods and find good substitutes for them. And then we can also add in anti-inflammatory foods that I'll be going over too. So celery is a great anti-inflammatory food. So are spices like turmeric and ginger, leafy greens, Swiss chard is amazing, and it can help you to overcome that chronic inflammation and to improve your health. So I'm going to go over what the most inflammatory foods are and then give you some suggestions for healthy swaps. So the first one is gluten and refined carbs. So gluten is a protein that's found in a variety of grains like wheat, rye, and barley. It's found in foods such as breads and pastas, baked goods like pastries and cookies. It's also found in beer, cereal, sauces that you may not think so, like soy sauce. It's in a majority of processed foods and also many other foods as well. So gluten promotes inflammation in the body, which can lead to digestive issues, disrupted brain functioning, potentially autoimmune disease, and mood disorders like depression. So what can you do to avoid gluten or to swap out gluten and refined carbs? So when working with clients, what I always say is, when we're talking about making changes to foods and eating habits, it's not so much, about eliminating an entire category of foods. So say like you like to eat bread or you like to eat pasta. It's just finding a way to enjoy those foods in a way that isn't going to be harmful for you, but is actually going to be beneficial. So that's where these healthy swaps really can be crucial at improving your overall health and reducing that inflammation. So one of the best things that you can do is you make your own gluten-free and refined carbohydrate-free foods at home. So when you are able to make your food at home, you have complete control over all the ingredients. So not only can you swap out, white flour or wheat flour for either almond flour, coconut flour, or buckwheat flour, you can also swap out things like cornstarch, because corn can also be inflammatory. It's this highly sensitive food for people that's hard to digest. So you could swap out cornstarch for like arrowroot powder or tapioca starch. You can also swap out sugar. So instead of cane sugar or brown sugar, you could add stevia or monk fruit. So this way you have complete control of what the ingredients are. So some gluten-free things that you can make at home, you can make your own breads, your own muffins, your own pancakes. And if you're not much of a baker or a cook, there are some minimally processed things that you can get at the grocery store as well that is going to help you with reducing gluten and refined carbs. So refined carbs are basically have been stripped of their nutrients. So you can kind of think of it as like white bread or white flour or white rice, things like that. It has very little nutritional value, very little fiber because that's been removed. So if you're thinking like, okay, what can I have instead of, say you're used to making a sandwich with bread or like a wrap with bread. One really good substitute is using lettuce instead. So instead of making like a wrap with a wheat tortilla, then you're just wrapping it in lettuce. You're doing like turkey tacos in lettuce wraps. You're doing a protein style hamburger or some turkey lettuce wraps. So that's one way to avoid gluten and also to really up your veggie intake. Other options would be, there are some grain-free breads that I recommend, and I've shared them on past Facebook Lives. So the difference between grain-free and gluten-free. So gluten-free is basically saying, okay, there's no gluten in this, so there's no wheat, rye, or barley. But sometimes gluten-free options are made with other grains, including corn or rice, which your body may or may not be okay with. So I feel like a safer bet is just to go grain-free. And these breads you'll find in the freezer section at health food stores. Sometimes they see them at conventional grocery stores too. For example, like one brand is called Base Culture, and it's made from, I believe, almond flour, coconut flour, eggs, and there's some other ingredients in there too, but they're all really clean. So that one is at Sprouts and it's at Sprouts and Whole Foods, but I've had other clients tell me that it's at Ralph's too. So that's really good news. That's more accessible to people. So Base Culture is one, Pacha is another one, that's a buckwheat bread, and Unbun, that's another brand that we recommend. That one is at Whole Foods and Mother's. But those are not just the only two, so always look at the ingredients list. Make sure everything on there you can pronounce, it's short. Get familiar with those ingredients that you're looking for in terms of trying to avoid gluten and refined carbs. So what you want to take a look at are words like wheat, multigrain. Multigrain just means that there's different grains in it. It really doesn't, I think it's kind of coined as a health term, but it's not. It's just saying that there's more than one grain. It might be a refined grain, it might be a whole grain, but it's still a grain. Enriched flour, which is just flour that's had vitamins and minerals added to it, but it's still based in wheat. Malt, spelt, barley, rye, white rice. Those are things that you want to look out for on the ingredients list. Other like minimally processed options that you can get at the grocery store. So for example, for tortillas, if you don't want to use a lettuce wrap, at Trader Joe's they have like these jicama wraps, so they're vegetable based and they're small. They're like good for kind of like if you do like street tacos or something like that. You can also get other wraps that are made from egg whites, from coconut, from almond or cassava. So again, these are all grain-free options. And then if you are used to having like wheat pasta, you can do a veggie-based pasta. These would be the best option in my opinion. So what's been getting really popular lately is what's called hearts of palm noodles. And there's Trader Joe's has a brand of them. Another brand is called Palmini, and it's literally just shredded hearts of palm. And what's great about them is that they're pretty much ready to go right out of the package. Like the package in itself is just like the hearts of palm, and you can put it on the stove to warm it up, but you don't even really have to cook them, which is great. They're also doing like riced hearts of palm now, which I'm seeing, which I think is really great. So that's a good alternative to white rice if you're avoiding rice right now. Zucchini noodles, which you can purchase ready or you can make them on your own. Another one is shirataki noodles, which are made from sea vegetables. And these don't really taste like anything. So you want to drain them from the bag. You can heat them up on the stove, and then you want to season them really well with whatever you're cooking, whatever sauces and spices that you're using, and they're going to take on the flavor of that. I personally think zucchini and hearts of palm noodles work really well when I'm kind of going like with Italian type flavors, and then if I'm doing more like Asian inspired cooking, I feel like the shirataki noodles work really well. Other ones that would be good are like buckwheat noodles, but again, read the label and you really just want it to say buckwheat. Again, that's another one that's good for Asian cooking. And then gluten is a primary ingredient in lots of different cereals. So instead of cereal, what you could do is you could do like a buckwheat hot cereal, and you'll find buckwheat at the grocery store, typically a health food store, in the cereal aisle. So good thing to do with buckwheat, it's a seed. What helps with digestion with buckwheat is if you soak it. So with seeds, and if you're having grains, soaking them works really well to have them easier to digest. So say you intend on having like buckwheat in the morning for breakfast. I think it's like a 1/4 cup buckwheat to 1 cup of water. Just let it sit in the water overnight, and then when you're ready to cook the next morning, you can use that same water, add more if you need to. I always cook like a few servings at once. That way I have some for the next few days and I'm not having to cook every day. Another option, instead of cereal, you could do like a chia pudding, and that's just soaking the same thing, like a 1/4 cup of chia seeds in your favorite like non-dairy unsweetened like nut or seed milk, and storing that overnight or for a few hours. You can jazz it up with like cinnamon or stevia or monk fruit, berries if that's okay for you right now. It's really good for constipation, but because it will gel, it'll like kind of plump up and create this like gel-like consistency, but it's really high in fiber and good fats. So that's a good substitute for cereal. And then lastly, you'll find gluten in a lot of like snacky items. So if you like crackers, then a good swap for that would be, instead of like wheat crackers, you do seed crackers, which you can make on your own at home, and you can use a dehydrator. That way you don't have to heat anything up. You can retain all those healthy fats. And then there are some minimally processed options at the grocery store. You can get like flaxseed crackers or almond crackers, and while those are a better option, you still don't want to overdo it on those either. So maybe have them like a few times a week, every now and then, but I wouldn't do it every day. And then what I want to say too is, if you are kind of reaching for those like carby foods to feel satiated, really focus on getting a good balance of protein, like good quality proteins, healthy fats, avocado, olive oil, and then veggies. Sweet potatoes are really satiating, squash, broccoli. Get a good mix of those to keep you satiated, and kind of focus on getting your carbs more so from your vegetables. Okay, so that's our first section, is on gluten and refined carbs. So the next inflammatory food that is probably like one of the highest ones is sugar. So sugar is everywhere. It's in candy bars, snack bars, baked goods. It's in pastries, sodas, sweetened coffee, tea, granola, cereal. It's in sauces, especially pasta sauces. It's in condiments like ketchup, barbecue sauce, teriyaki sauce. So kind of like the list goes on with that. So excess sugar has been shown to lead to weight gain, to sleepless nights, to poor dental health, liver problems, mood disorders, anxiety, depression. It weakens your immune system significantly. It can aggravate pain in the body. So you might not make that connection like, oh, my joints hurt and I'm eating this excess sugar and it's making it worse, but you might not make that connection between one and the two. It also increases the risk of cancer. And in addition to sweeteners, you also want to avoid artificial sweeteners, or in addition to sugar, I should say, you want to avoid artificial sweeteners. They have a neurotoxic effect on the brain. They contribute to digestive issues, and they accelerate the aging process, which no one wants. So what can you do instead of having sugar and artificial sweeteners? Just like I said with gluten and refined carbs, make your own desserts at home instead of getting the store-bought ones. Again, you have so much more control over what's going in your food. And then a good swap to make, if say a recipe calls for brown sugar or cane sugar or something like that, I would recommend stevia or monk fruit. These are natural sweeteners, low calorie, and the best thing is they won't disrupt your blood sugar, so they won't give you that spike. And you can use either one. They are heat stable, so you can add them to teas, you can bake with them, you can cook with them. You can look up charts online that will tell you how much to use. So if your recipe might call for a cup of sugar, it'll give you the equivalent to use for stevia or monk fruit. With stevia, with both of them, they're actually a lot sweeter than sugar. So what I would recommend, say if you're using it to sweeten like a tea or a drink or something like that, is just start off with a little bit. I use like the little stevia droppers from Sweet Leaf, and usually I'll just put in a few, and if I want a little bit more, then yeah, I can add it in then. But I would say start with a little bit, and then you can always add more to it. And if you are looking to satisfy a sweet craving, another option would be to go for like sweet or like low glycemic fruits. So things like berries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, also green apples. And you can pair that with some kind of protein. So you could do like berries and like a handful of raw nuts and seeds. You can do the green apples with raw almond butter to kind of, when you have those together, then the protein and the fats is going to slow down the digestion or the breakdown of the sugar in the fruits. So that's helpful as well as keeping your blood sugar stable. Another option to consider is incorporating more sweet vegetables into your cooking or into your snacks. So sweet vegetables would be like beets, sweet potatoes, carrots. These all have lots of fibers. So again, it'll slow the breakdown of sugar in the body. And then other things to consider when it comes to being mindful of reducing and avoiding sugar is not to skip meals. So you want to be eating throughout the day so that you keep your blood sugar steady, because what will happen is if you're not eating for a long time, say like you go without eating for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, your blood sugar is going to start to dip, and then you're going to want something that's like quick and easy, sweet and carby to be able to kind of bring it back up. And that's when you also might overeat. So what would help is that you don't wait too long without eating. You have just like a little snack, even if it's just that, to kind of carry you through to your next meal or snack. That way you can keep your blood sugar regulated and your metabolism high. Another thing to focus on is making sure you're getting proteins at every meal, like a good serving of protein at every meal. So maybe the size of the palm of your hand, whether it's like chicken or fish or eggs, beef, whatever you like. Those proteins are going to keep you satiated longer. That's why nuts and seeds can be a good snack. But again, with everything, even though something's good for you, you want to find that balance and not overdoing it. So when it comes to a snack, always figure like a snack is kind of like the size of the palm of your hand. But if you are choosing to have your snack be like nuts and seeds, then it's whatever you can fit in the closed palm of your hand. And you can always pair it with something. So you can pair it with like veggies or like a boiled egg or something, pickles, so that you don't overdo it on like just having the raw nuts and seeds. Again, with sugar, just like I said with gluten and refined carbs, check the ingredients list, ignore all the marketing on the packaging, and then get familiar with those words that are used for sugar, because it's not necessarily just going to say sugar. It might say corn syrup or brown rice syrup, molasses. It might say cane sugar, maltodextrin, sucrose. So keep an eye out for those words. And again, just kind of rule of thumb, relatively short. If something is like the first 1 to 2 things on that list, that means there's the most of it in there. So especially if you notice like sugar, refined carbs at the top of the list, then I would just go ahead and say no to those. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. So we talked about gluten and refined carbs, sugar and artificial sweeteners. So I want to talk a little bit about meat. So whether you choose to eat meat is totally a personal choice, and I respect that. What I will say is that if you choose to eat meat, the kind of meat that you eat matters, and you want to go for the highest quality possible. And that's because when it comes to conventionally raised meat and dairy, as well as farm-raised fish and seafood, there's a potential for hormones, antibiotics, GMOs, and toxic pesticides to come from grain-fed animals and farm-raised fish, and all of those can be highly inflammatory. So these animals are raised in crowded conditions. They're often given antibiotics. They're fed a less than optimal diet, and they generally have a high chemical exposure. So we don't want, to be ingesting that and having those inflammatory responses in the body. So what do you want to look for when it comes to purchasing meat? So if you are eating poultry or eggs, go for pasture raised. These have been, able to, their conditions, they're organic and their conditions aren't crowded. They're able to free range. When it comes to beef or lamb, go for grass fed. And when it comes to fish and seafood, go for wild caught instead of farmed. Wild caught fish, focus on the ones that are low in mercury. So that would be like salmon, cod, tilapia. Could be chunk like tuna, herring, anchovy, sardines. All those are good. If you have butter, then I would go for like a grass-fed ghee instead. So ghee is the butter without the lactose, with the lactose removed. So it's going to be easier on your system. And then if you're used to having like byproducts like yogurt, then you could do a unsweetened nut or seed-based yogurt like coconut, hemp, almond milk. All those would be great. Yogurt and milk. Okay, so pay attention to the quality of your meat. That's really the most important thing when it comes to purchasing meat products. Next inflammatory food to consider is highly processed vegetable and seed oils. So we have different fats that are in our foods. We have omega-6s, which can be highly inflammatory and may contribute to the development of pain and disease. And then we also have omega-3 fats, which are actually anti-inflammatory. And it's not going to be possible for us to avoid omega-6 fats because they're actually in some nutrient-dense foods like almonds and other nuts, but we want to make sure that we are really focusing on getting omega-3s to help balance out the ratio. So some foods that are high in omega-6 would be like those processed oils like canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, margarine, cottonseed, and peanut oil. So what would be some good options to use instead? So if you are if you are using oils for like a cold preparation, like you're putting them on a salad or something like that, then I would go with olive oil. That's kind of like my go-to. You can also use avocado oil or flaxseed oil. And then to continue to get those good omega-3 fats, you can do like nuts and seeds, including like nut butters. And a good one is chia seeds. Those are really great. You can also do avocado as a good cold fat. And then if you are using fat to heat up, I would put more focus on the cold ones. But hi, Kaylee. But if you are heating things up from time to time, then I would use an organic virgin coconut oil. Again, you can use ghee, avocado oil. And you want to think you're also getting some heated fats when you are eating like meat, like grass-fed meat, pasture-raised poultry and eggs, and wild-caught fish. So in summary of what I just said for the inflammatory foods, 3 things to keep in mind really. So avoid sugars and grains, get rid of the bad processed fats and add in more good fats, and then go for high quality meat choices. Okay, so it really just comes down to that. And then in addition to that, I would say stick with just whole food eating. You want to be mindful of additives and preservatives in processed foods, like things used to color foods or MSG. You want to be avoiding those as best you can. Okay. And then I want to also share with you some anti-inflammatory foods that you can continue to work into your regimen. So these will help to fight any inflammation that's currently going on. So one to consider are like green leafy vegetables. So Swiss chard is a great one. It's high in vitamin A, C, and K, and it will protect the brain from oxidative stress. Another good one is bok choy. Celery is a great anti-inflammatory food. It's high in potassium to help flush out toxins. So you could actually do celery itself. You can make like a quick and easy juice. Just put like 2 stalks of celery in the blender with ice and water, lemon if that's okay with you. And I like to freeze my celery and then blend it, and I think it tastes better that way. Celery seed is actually anti-inflammatory as well. Other good vegetables would be like beets and broccoli. These are both high in potassium and magnesium, and actually magnesium deficiency is strongly linked with inflammatory conditions. And then also go for good healthy fats. Chia seeds and salmon, those are really high in essential fatty acids. And then 2 spices that would work really well in combating inflammation are turmeric, which contains curcumin, and it's really good at effectively managing or helping to manage RA or rheumatoid arthritis. With that said, you would probably have to consume a lot of turmeric, and what can be really beneficial are turmeric supplements that are whole food and really effective. So we have some here that we test on clients, and then they're a lot stronger than what you can get at the grocery store. They're really concentrated. And then ginger is another good spice that's actually an immune modulator, so it helps to decrease or inflammation in the body. So ginger is a good one. It's also really good for digestion too. If you have a heavy meal, I know like sometimes if I'm out and I go out to eat or something like that and I feel kind of like loafed afterwards, what I do is I have like a ginger tea, and I might have the help of like digestive supplements too that I don't necessarily normally take, but I will if I go out to eat or something like that. So those are some good other options of anti-inflammatory foods. As I've mentioned in the past, with all clients that we work with at Natural Healing Center, we always prioritize digestion first at the beginning of any program, because we want to make sure that your body is going to be able to break down your foods okay, that it's going to be able to adequately absorb the nutrients from your food. And then we also work to test you on food sensitivities so we can start to remove those foods that have kept you from feeling well, and also add in the healing foods that'll help the body to rebuild and repair itself. So always start with digestion, and then from there we're in a really good place to handle any other stress that might be on the body, whether that's chemical, metal, might be an immune challenge like virus, bacteria. We're in a better place to handle those, and we can do that all through the muscle testing to see what's stressing the body and what would work well to bring it back into balance. So it starts with doing an initial consultation, which takes place over 2 days' time. 1 day for testing, so we can really get to know you and create a roadmap to your health and wellness, and then a second day to go over the results of the testing and share those recommendations with you. Price for initial consultation is $299. You get $50 discount for mentioning this Facebook Live, so that brings the price to $249. We meet with clients in person and virtually, so what we do can be done, whether you're right here in the office with me or whether you are on the other side of the country in a different time zone, that's fine. We're going to be able to do what we need to do at a distance. So if you have any questions on an initial consultation, feel free to send me a private message or write them in the chat. I hope you found this information valuable, and feel free to please share this video with anyone who you feel it might benefit, and I'd really appreciate that. Next week I will be on here again at 5:30, and if you have any thing that you would like me to talk about, whether it's related to foods or stress, holistic health, lifestyle, then I am very open to taking your suggestions, and I want to be able to provide you with the information that you are looking for. Next week we're going to talk about, you're welcome, Brian, thank you for joining. Next week we're going to be talking about clean beauty. So it'll be taking a look at beauty products, personal care products, how to what to look for in terms of ingredients, and how to avoid toxins. I'm going to talk about anti-aging in a natural way, and what are some things that would be beneficial. I think like a little preview, but I think some of the best things that you can do for like your skin and for aging is really like getting a good balanced diet, getting lots of sleep, drinking lots of water, and not stressing as best you can. But I'm going to be sharing a lot more information next week, and so I hope you'll join then. And as always, hi Judy, thanks for joining. As always, you can catch the replay if you can't make it live, but I really love you guys joining, and I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to connecting with you guys next time. Thanks.